Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have such a diverse set of participants with us. My name is Nehal Karnik from Improv. Improv Consulting and Knowledge Solutions Private Limited is a 22-year-old consulting organization offering strategic and operational solutions that drive business growth, process excellence, and sustainable development. Since 2004, Impro has served 700 plus organizations across industries. We introduced Impro Risk as a separate vertical in 2024 to focus on risk management services. We established Earthson Sustainability Solutions as a division focused on sustainability services. This webinar is one amongst our several initiatives towards enhancing knowledge in the industry and create awareness in the industry regarding the changes. Today's webinar session is on understanding the changes in the new version of ISO 14001-2016 and preparing for compliance. I will just go through the webinar etiquettes. All attendees' microphones and cameras have been muted to ensure smooth audio for everyone. Please put your questions in the Teams chat at any point during the session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A if time permits. This session is being recorded for our internal records. If you experience any technical difficulties, please note them in the chat and we will assist you. It gives me great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Manish Pawar, Director at Impro Consulting and Knowledge Solutions Private Limited and co-founder of Earthson Sustainability Solutions. Mr. Manish brings over 23 years of cross-functional experience in strategy, operations, business transformation, and sustainability consulting. At Impro, he has led large-scale organizational development and operational excellence programs with deep expertise spanning ISO standards, ESG, BRSR, and EHS. At Earthson, he specializes in ESG strategy and environmental impact assessments, helping organizations turn sustainability into a measurable business advantage. A mechanical engineer with qualifications in sustainability, sociology, economics, operational research, and human rights, Mr. Manish brings a multidisciplinary approach to solving business and sustainability challenges. He is a qualified leader for ISO 14001, ISO 45001, ISO 9001, and social accountability standards, with extensive experience in auditing and management system implementation across diverse industries. With that, I hand over the session to Mr. Manish Pawar. Over to you, Mr. Manish.
Thank you, Snehal, for the introduction. Am I audible to you, all of you? Is there any issue with the audio?
It's audible. It's audible, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Noted. Well noted. I'll start the presentation. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
There you go. Thank you. Well, it gives me immense pleasure to present this presentation in front of you. And it is a pleasure basically because we are joined globally from all over the world. And this shows that this subject is very important. And there is a lot of ambiguity currently regarding the new standard, uh, which has been published in this fall, that is April 26. Is my slide completely on the screen, or do I need to modify it? We are just trying to streamline the infrastructure here. Is it visible now properly? Okay. Okay. Uh, I will just give you an overview of today's 90 minutes session. We will be starting with the introduction and overview of the new standard, the new version of the standard. Afterwards, we will be trying to understand the transition timeline and the key dates. Um, then for the next up to 1 hour, we will be talking about the various changes that have actually taken place in the standard. The next 15 minutes, we will be talking about what needs to be done in your organization um, at every clause level, or what actions can you take to transit. And then for the last 15 minutes, we will be handling the question and answers. Okay. You can put your questions in the chat. We will try to answer as many questions as possible by the end of the session. And in case we cannot, we will definitely get in touch with you, or you can get in touch with us and have further clarification on your doubts. So with this, we will just start this session. Well, let's look at the macro picture first before we delve into the changes. What is the rationale behind the new updates as such? Well, all standards are subjected to revision by the ISO committee, and this was also subjected to revision. The standard initially was published in 1996. Later it was revised in 2004, and after that it was again revised in 2015. uh, and then now we have this new revision of 2026. What has changed in these times? Okay, if we look at it, I think 10 years back hardly people were talking about environment management systems, and now sustainability, ESG, etc. are the buzzwords in the industry. It is now connected to finance, it is now connected to operations, it is now uh, topics which were generally operational, environmental compliances, and which were only subjected to the maybe the perhaps the environment department or the EHS function, are now spoken at the director board level. So that is a massive change that has happened in terms of the subject of environment. So environment management is no longer an operational subject, and it has turned into a strategic activity. And and it is also connected to finance, right? So obviously managing the environment systems has is no longer an alternative. And so more and more companies are now adopting ISO 14000 as a system standard for environment. Tomorrow, I mean, if we consider the changes that we talk about in the industry, it is now synonymous with ESG or sustainability reporting. In fact, in the BRSR guideline, all listed companies, I mean, all the top 1,000 company listed companies are mandatorily now told to go in for ISO 14000 certification, and this is now percolating in the supply chain also. So understanding the standard, or streamlining the in the standard as per the new changing environment was a need of the hour. So that was one rationale behind this the upgradation of the standard. Now this standard is not a rewrite of the original standard, but it is an evolution, or a next maturity level of the original standard of 2015. Okay. It is now more aligned with the ISO harmonized structure, the NXSL, previously which it was not. Okay, so now there is a lot of alignment with the NXSL. This standard basically has now more clarification. Earlier, several terms, okay, in terms of emergency situation, life cycle assessment, risk and opportunity, were not thoroughly clarified in the previous standard, which are now subjected to better clarification. And it is also now putting emphasis on transparency of data. It is now emphasizing on reporting, including reporting in the new framework, etc. So interested parties, stakeholders who require compliances from organizations related to environment, or typically, are also now included. So we'll look at these points when we go clause by clause. This is a sort of a timeline that we have to keep in mind, since you all will be representing some other organization being certified. So if we consider, the last amendment was in 2004, which included climate change. Now, in April, we have this new standard published, the 2026 version. Uh, the IF transition guidance, which releases the mandatory document for the certification body, or the guidelines for the certification bodies, would be released in October, in this fall, in this coming October 2026, and after which, typically, certification bodies would basically start preparing for the auditing process. So that's a 12-month sort of a window up to 2027, by which certification bodies would be equipped to handle transition audits, or to handle the audits of the new standard. And then April 2029 is the month wherein the 2015 standard would be officially obsolete. So even if you are certified for 2015, by that time your certificate would be automatically obsolete and cancelled. I mean, so all the companies have to get themselves transited by this timeline, basically. So these were the timelines. Now we quickly look at the changes that have happened. Now, the changes have happened, homogeneously across several clauses here. So we'll be handling all of them here. Now, since this is we have a window of 1 hour we will be quickly going through these changes. People who will be having in-depth doubt or conceptual doubt can also connect to us later. So in the scope, in the clause 1, the scope, there is no structural change as such, but there is one important terminology change, wherein previously in the standard, the term was basically a fulfillment of compliance obligation. Now that term has changed to meeting compliance obligation. So they have brought more clarity and more focus on this. It is not just fulfillment, but you have to just meet the compliance obligations. The rest of the language is now more aligned to ISO harmonized structure. Subtle editorial refinements for consistency has happened with other clauses. Um, but largely there is not much of change in the scope document here, in the scope clause. As far as terms and definitions are concerned, yes, there are certain changes that have happened. Now, in the previous version of the standard, risk was a standalone term. Now they have removed risk as a standalone term and only kept risk and opportunities. Okay, so the definition of risk has been removed, and only the definition. So they don't want to treat risk as an independent concept. They want to treat risk along with opportunities. Okay, so that's the focus of this change here. And another change was the term outsource process has now been replaced by externally provided processes, product and services. So there was a lot of ambiguity of contracting, outsourcing, etc. And it came to environment. In the 45,000 standard, they have put it separately, but then in the other standards, apart from 45, they have always maintained this terminology as externally provided processes, product and services. So now they have incorporated the same definition here, and they have removed outsource as a term. Okay, so now they are more focusing on, they have changed it to external provider instead of contractors or suppliers. One important change that has happened is, previously in the documented information, if you look across the standard, it was said maintain and retain documented information. So now this has been changed and aligned with the largely Annex SL, and it is now the term has changed from maintained to available. So we'll be talking more about that later. Currently, just understand, maintained has changed to available. Okay, retain documented information as evidence. Again, documented information shall be available as evidence here. So these are a certain change. And again, they have expanded the definition of indicators, which was very brief. Now they have made it more clear in term. They have added quantitative, qualitative, quantitative or binary variable representing the status of the operations, management, condition or impact. So they have got more clarification here. For sort of a further understanding, you can read the standard 14031, which talks about the vocabulary. Again, life cycle, they do not only talk about product, but they have also mentioned life cycle for services also. So now if you're a project management company, or you're a software company, or you're a facility management company, so these all this, so life cycle also involves service operations life cycle. And again, we talk about compliance obligation. The word fulfill has been replaced with meet here. We'll be understanding more about it. So now we come to the core clauses. The fourth clause. Okay. So in the fourth clause, in the fourth 4.1 clause, understanding the organization and its context. This clause has always been a gray area in terms of concepts, to a lot of companies. Now, we will not go deep in the clauses, but we will understand what has changed in the clause. Now, the same core requirements are maintained. Okay, what the determination of external and internal issues relevant to the purpose, etc. So the core requirement remains the same here, but now they are talking more in, they are more clear in 4.1. They have added this normative text. Normative means mandatory. Please understand, it is mandatory that in the 4.1 clause you are supposed to list out the issues related to pollution levels, availability of natural resources, climate change, biodiversity or ecosystem health. So now this ecosystem health is a new term that they have added to the annexure. Again, I like to reiterate here, previously the 14,000 was most of the time the focus was on the requirements. Now it is expected that you go to the guidance part also, wherein they have to the annexure also, and refer what is expected there. So please understand, by all who are practitioners or maybe auditors or maybe transition agent in their organizations, please do not look at the requirement standalone. Also go to the annexure and the guidance document there. So here they have explicitly defined what is the ecosystem. Typically, it's a entire setup of which contains the entire ecosystem and the way it works, and then what is the effect of your organization on the surrounding ecosystem. uh, so that is what is expected in the 4.1 clause. You are supposed to redefine your issues and risk register may be here, which and include pollution level, availability of natural resources, etc. Interconnectedness of environmental conditions emphasize this. Failure to consider them can worsen impact and increase operational risk. That's it. So organizations now must explicitly address biodiversity and ecosystem health in the context analysis. So auditors typically who are well versed with environment management, or who have extensive experience in environment domain, would definitely expect organizations to have a detailed analysis of these impacts and identification of issues here related to these added normative texts. The 4.2 clause here, there is not macro change here, but yes, in the requirement C of 4.2 now explicitly states compliance obligation will be addressed through the EMS, and there is a link to the 6.1.3 clause which talks about compliance obligation, which was not earlier there. Okay, so now in 4.2, what does it state here? It states that identification of stakeholders is now you have to be more careful about that and more thorough about that. If we consider the state and the government and the legal system as one stakeholder, so it has to be now linked to the to how you would be basically addressing your legal obligations. So this C was earlier not there, so now they have added this C point to the 4.2 clause. Now explicitly states compliance obligation. There are two notes that are added here in the new standard. Interested parties can have a need related to environmental conditions. Okay, and needs and expectations other than legal requirement become compliance obligation. Let us spend some time here. This is something that is very important. In the new scenario, in the changing current scenario, um, I would find that most of the companies somehow are being expected from their customers in some way or the other. It can be a simple supplier audit having an environment related checklist. It can be expectations of a customer to from you to enlist in the eco audits portal, or they may expect you to undergo a SEDEX audit. Okay, or they may expect you know high end ESG report from you. So whatever the conditions are, okay, now these expectations from these interested parties are expected to be part of the needs and expectations. Okay, it is important that you list them out. um, and if you're a listed company, so your ESG report or whatever you commit in the ESG report, okay, have to be basically a part of the needs and expectations. Especially if you look at the national responsible business guideline piece, the principle 6, which talks about environment. Okay, so these are are sort of a mandatory through the BRSR for listed companies. So these are also to be taken into account in the needs and expectations. Earlier, what was happening? There was a ESG department separately. There was and environment management system was operating at a very plant level. And so now during the audit, the auditor, I'm sure, would be asking other requirements also. Now, as far as the suppliers of these companies are concerned, in the supply chain also, there will be lot of expectations in terms of ESG, typically the environment. So all these also have to be part of the needs and expectations of the interested party. Okay, now again there is a expansion in the guideline here. You have to go down the annexure and look at the guideline, which is a 4.2. They have expanded. Typically, examples include compliance with environmental pollution regulations, reporting on natural resource consumption. Um, a lot of companies who are supplying to European continent and fall in the 7 sectors, typically steel, chemical. There is for the carbon boundary adjustment mechanism, okay, CBAM. So all these will be considered as customer expectations. Okay, so all these somehow, if the auditor is aware that you are supplying to the European continent, then he might ask uh, evidence of the CBAM compliance here, whatever. So all these need to be a part of the needs and expectations of the interested parties. So that was it from the fourth clause. Okay, we saw 4.1, which spoke about additional context. They have put these mandatory text here: pollution level, availability of natural resources, etc. They are talking about including environment, ecosystem health also in the issue register. And in the 4.2 needs and expectations, they have explicitly addressed basically the compliance obligation. And moreover, what would be amended at the ground level for implementers is addition of the customers environment and sustainability requirement. Sustainability, if we talk about the EMS standard, I will only talk about the environment component of it, not the ethics or not the safety component. Well, let's go to the leadership clause. Uh, in the leadership clause, there is no structural change again here. There is all things remain the same, except um, there is a addition in the annexure, okay, which talks about top management can demonstrate leadership and enhance trust with interested party through actions on environment and sustainability issues. So now here the word sustainability has entered the domain here. So at the leadership level, they are talking about demonstrating leadership through enhanced compliance regarding sustainability issues with the interested parties. Uh, but at the clause level, if you want to amend any document, that is not much to do on this clause. As far as the 5.2 is concerned, yes, environmental policy, again there is a change in the terminology here. The word fulfillment for compliance obligation is now turned to meet compliance requirement. Other commitments can include preservation of natural resources. Now this is something that is added here in the new standard. Other commitments can include preservation of natural resources, sustainable resources use, climate change mitigation and adaptation, or protection of biodiversity and ecosystem. Why I'm stating all this here is because this can be added to the environment policy. Okay, so there can be questions from auditors or maybe top management ki why this is not included. So it is advised that implementers and and auditors basically in organizations relook at the environment policy and try to include these commitments in your policy if they are not. Okay, and is there again there is a sort of a addition in the annexure again in the 5.3 clause, which is uh, so here they're talking about 5.3 typically talks about roles and responsibilities and authorities. The core clause remains the same. There is a change, there is a more clarification in the annexure. They're talking about assigning responsibilities plus ensuring competence, awareness, and internal communication can enhance employee engagement in the EMS. Now, structurally, you may not have to do much about this clause, but then please be aware that this is expanded. Okay, so while implementing roles and responsibilities in terms of environment, you can take help of this. How would you assign responsibilities? Maybe for aspect impact assessment, maybe for emergency situation identification. Uh, uh, um, for MIS for in terms of environmental MIS in terms of environmental compliances, and you can ensure training to develop competence. How would you create more awareness, and then internal communication. So all these is somehow connected to the roles and responsibilities and authorities here. So as far as the fifth clause is concerned, there is typically there are not much change in the 5.1 structure. 5.2 we talk about additional commitment related to preservation of natural resources, sustainable resource. You can add these commitment to the policy at the implementation level, and then you can go to the annexure to seek more guidance on how to implement the role, responsibility, and authority clauses. Now we come to a very important clause, the sixth clause, from where actually things start. Yes, there is a sort of a um, change in this. We can say the first change that has happened largely may come in the clause 6 here. So governance, I mean, what does planning talk about? Planning talk about basically identifying what are the aspect impact, identifying which are significant, and then planning the actions, and then setting objectives, etc. So that was a earlier thought process. Okay, so now they have also included largely how would you manage change. So there is a new clause that has been added here, which is 6.3, which is explicitly talking about management of change. This is an overview slide. We'll go deep into these clauses again. So there is a new clause that has been added, which is a 6.3, planning for change. And the first clause in the 6.1.1, which was in the previous standard, has been typically split, and the concept of risk and opportunity has been extracted, and a new clause has been created, which is a 6.1.4. Okay, so 6.1.4 is again a new addition to the 6.1 clause series, and the 6.3 clause has been added. We'll go one by one through these clauses. So typically 6.1.1 had this requirement of identifying, considering the risks, considering the issues and the stakeholders, and then the scope we had to identify the risk and then the opportunity. That was the earlier concept. Now what they have done is the new version basically has shortened the general clause, and they have separated risk and opportunity in a separate clause. Now why is this basically happened? Largely the thought process is, at the implementation and the auditing level, you will find people earlier considering that risk assessment was only about aspect and impact. Okay, and then at the implementation level, there was not much of a emphasis on issue identification and opportunity identification. Well, it was tacitly there in the background, but it was not in the forefront. Now, what they have done is they have uh, independently kept a normative requirement here, which will now force every auditor and every implementer and then any implementing organization to address environmental risk and opportunity as an independent activity, and which is a maybe at the ground level a lot of companies might be doing that currently, but then I know there are a lot of companies who do not take this independently, clause as an independent responsibility. Okay, it is a tick mark thing in the implementation. So now that would be going away. So, and risk and opportunity would be an independently audited subject. Okay. Now, here comes the important clause again here, which is a 6.1.2 basically. Now, 6.1.2 is a sort of a heart of the entire implementation, wherein we are required to identify and then sort of identify what can go wrong, identify the significant, etc. So, what has changed here now in this clause is, if you could recall, the word life cycle perspective was always an ambiguity. If you could recall, there was not clarity. There was some guidance, sort of a note provided by the ISO earlier, but then there was always some ambiguity about the life cycle perspective, which now they have clarified significantly. They have so here the first important thing that we need to talk about change is a life cycle. New note on life cycle perspective is added. Okay, and this note is very important. We should all go through that. They have explicitly spoken about life cycle perspective in detail. They are explicit here then talking about the entire cycle from raw material, design, production, transportation, usage, end of life, and final disposal. Okay, now this is a note. Understand the point. They have given you that you can do this, but it does not require that the organization do a full life cycle assessment. Okay, now this cycle, this talks about life cycle assessment, wherein various impacts of the product are basically measured, but there is no requirement of a formal LCA. Okay, but they have said, now if you consider large organizations who are listed, okay, they in their sustainability report always commit to certain life cycle assessment, goals. Okay, that we will be measuring the life cycle assessment of these product, etc. So these would be connected to the 4.2 or the voluntary obligation that we talk about. In those cases, okay, the auditor can basically seek data on this. Please provide evidence of your commitment to life cycle assessment, but it is not a mandatory requirement. Okay, large companies should be consulting their ESG function regarding this. As far as the middle scale companies who are not listed, okay, this is not going to be a mandatory requirement, but yes, they would expect that if at all their customer is asking you to conduct a life cycle assessment, or to basically identify greenhouse gas emissions, etc. So there those would be considered as requirements. So it is all connected here. So again, coming back to that point here is, although life cycle assessment is not compulsory, but yes, organizations have to demonstrate that they are at least focusing on understanding what are the impacts of their product and their services and their process in the entire supply chain, right from the cradle to the grave basically, and as much as possible try to understand what is happening there. Although it's not a mandatory, LCA is not mandatory, but yes, demonstration that you are putting your efforts is very important here. Okay, so the next change was, they have added a new normative requirement of, that the organization shall determine potential emergency situations, which was not earlier there. Okay, so they were talking about collectively about consider abnormal conditions, potentials, but now here it is a normative requirement. It is a mandatory requirement that in your aspect impact, maybe your aspect impact assessment, before that you have to identify all the potential emergency situations. This will be audited. This will be definitely audited. So if we consider a typical risk assessment of for health and safety, you would know that, we consider every operation undergoing three scenarios, what is normal, abnormal, and emergency. Similar to this condition, now aspect impact also has to be considered in, when an activity is working normally, which is an explicit word here they have mentioned. Consider normal, abnormal, and then potential emergency situation. So now this basically we are mandatory told to identify potential emergency situation separately and then subject them to a aspect impact assessment. So considering normal and abnormal situations, potential emergency now listed as item C under conditions to control. So there's a separate item C that way which has been added, and the definition of abnormal condition is now clearly mentioned in the annexure document. Okay, and you can go back and check the situation that are not typically, not typically or happen rarely or are unplanned. New considerations in annexure 6.1.2 basically talks about use of marine and coastal areas. Now if your organization is basically situated near the near a marine environment or in coastal areas, you also have to consider the effect of your organization on marine and coastal area. So this depends upon the type of location and the type of business that we talk about, but this also, if applicable, needs to be added to the aspect impact. So we spoke about life cycle here. Uh, these are certain standards basically which are connected to life cycle assessment, product declaration, product carbon footprint. Okay, so if you want to know more about this, you can connect with us later. We have programs for all these. If you want to, if you're interested basically in knowing more and get and understanding. 6.1.4, now this clause has been, new dedicated section has been given here, like I said. So a dedicated normative is mandatory. Okay, 6.1.4 is added basically. There's a new annexure here. Okay, there's a new annexure in 6.1.4 which extensively basically gives examples of beneficial opportunities and adverse risk. Now the largely the text of 6.1.4 is similar to what was earlier in 6.1.1. Okay, but now they have added certain examples to make the implementation far more understandable by giving examples here of beneficial opportunity and adverse risks. Now what has to be done at the implementation level? It is expected that whenever there is a risk, there is always an opportunity actually. So that's the concept that they want to bring. So that is why they have clubbed together. Now again, the point here is it also clarifies that organizations retain the authority to determine which risk and opportunity to address based on their capacity. So tomorrow if certain auditor says that why have you not capitalized on this opportunity, so you can obviously justify that that it may not be currently in your capacity to address this opportunity. So the responsibility lies with the organization. It cannot be superimposed, but yes, um, you should be providing evidence of explicit of opportunities also with risk. Now this is a very important clause that has been added. This clause was absolutely needed when it came to environment management system. Now, people who work in large companies or have explicit management of control, MOC would always know that, safety is considered, quality is considered, process defects are considered, but then there was no as such no requirement in the standard for consideration of environmental impact of any change. So now this has been added. So what will be needed here? So the new normative 6.3 tells us that the organization determines the needs for changes that shall be carried out in a planned manner. Changes shall be managed to ensure that organization shall still achieve intended EMS control, which is fairly okay. And they have added these notes. Change can arise from internal external sources. That is again a common sense. Now I'll tell you, the note 2 is very important, that you need to link your MOC. Basically you need to change your MOC procedure, that you, so that it addresses the whenever there is a change, there has to be a provision wherein whether there is an impact or an aspect that is impacting the environment, you have to understand whether there needs to be a sort of a communication, which is 7.2.4 4.2, that needs to be done. You also have to understand whether there is going to be a change in the documented information in terms of records, in terms of specifications, etc. And then you also have to address in your MOC whether any criteria needs to be updated or added, or any control has to be superimposed, etc., which is the 8.1. And then how would you basically monitor it during the internal audit, etc. And then the point of action that need to be taken in case there is. So your MOC has to ensure that all these requirements are addressed. Okay. And your current MOC, if may not be aligned for environment to address environment change, should also be amended. This is something very important. Now they have clearly basically mentioned in the annexure 6.3 that there are eight type of changes typically: new product, services, process, compliance obligation, change, knowledge change, technology, etc. You can actually go and read in the annexures, which is excellent information. But at the same time, here in the standard there is no mention of a requirement for availability of documented information, but still you the MOC has to be documented. That's going to be a implicit need. We move on to the support clause. Support, basically there has not been much of a change here in the support. 7.1 only there is a addition to the annexure. They have said that in terms of resource identification, you can also explicitly include engineered pollution control, information database, and software. This is just an update of the resource register. In the 7.4 annexure, they have expanded here. They have said in terms of communication, requirement for external communication on environmental sustainability info continue to grow. Organization can voluntarily report or on resource efficiency and water footprint. So this is again in the annexure. It is not something that is mandatory, but large companies do have their sustainability reporting. And a lot of companies who have subscribed to eco audits have to yearly basically update their info if it is required by the client, etc. So all these things are subtly added in the standard, but it is in the annexure here. Well, the one important point here about documented information is that the term basically maintained and retained has been changed to available, shall be available. So this is a change that has happened across all the standards, whether it be asset management or any other standard or other ISO standards also. The term maintained and retained has been changed to available. We'll talk about it in the next slide. 7.5 annexure, again a new example has been added. Documented information of external origin include environmental regulatory approvals, equipment manufacturer operation manuals, applicable standards, external environmental database, etc. So it is an annexure. So talking about this subtle change from maintained to available, what is the philosophy and the intent behind that? They are trying to, when we talk about being available, it is talk about being accessible readily, accessible by auditors, accessible by users, accessible by the management, or accessible by any interested party. So the maybe on the ground, basically it may not have a direct impact, but then yes, the thought process has changed. They are now including digital environment alignment, wherein the 2006 edition formally embraces modern workflows such as cloud database, SaaS, okay, SaaS based system, real time dashboards, and collaborative platform, etc. So environment, so they have uh, added all these in at the conceptual stage. Operational over functional operational over functional storage, it is expected that the data is not sitting inside some archival folder. It is always available for use, and then increased documentation flexibility. They have become more flexible. You can show from the portal, you can show from your system, you can, there is no need, as we all know, there is no need for a hard copy or as such, but then here they have become more flexible. Organizations have more leeway in how they present a compliance evidence. Example, a lot of large companies have their own compliance systems or a compliance portal. So data can directly be shown from there. You need not have a separate legal register. Maybe if you are able to demonstrate that you are controlling all your legal controls from the platform only, etc. Operations. um, in this clause, now again, not much has changed here in the operation. Only the terminology from outsourced process has been changed to externally provided processes, product or service. Yes, the annexure has expanded here. Controls on externally provided item now include specifying requirement. Yes, please understand, this is very important. In our experience, this a lot of times it is difficult to instill environmental requirements when it comes to the purchasing function. Well, there is a explicit standard now for a sustainable procurement. Well, but it becomes difficult to handle the environmental compliance in terms of purchase. So here they are very specific here, now talking about key specifying requirements in purchasing documents, evaluating qualifications and performance history, providing pre-job briefing or training, and requiring submittal of documentation, conducting oversights or audits of external providers. So your contracts need to be amended, your purchase orders need to be terms and conditions need to be amended, your vendor evaluation criteria needs to be upgraded, your vendor selection criteria again needs to be amended to include environmental requirements. Okay, so all these were subtle earlier, they were assumptions a lot of times, and they were part of the good practice. Now they are expected in this standard. Okay, now 8.2, if we consider now references emergency situation. Now yes, in this there is a direct linkage to 6.1.2, which says that emergency situations have to be identified earlier itself during the aspect impact stage. Okay, and emergency preparedness, they are saying consider periodic reviews. So periodic reviews of your emergency preparedness is mandatory, which was not earlier. People were looking, if we consider health and safety, so that was taken more seriously there, but in terms of environment it was not much of a looked upon point. But now they are explicit here key, you have to consider periodical reviews and revision of the processes. Ninth clause, performance evaluation. Um, there's a subtle small change in terms of 9.1.1c. The criteria against which the org will evaluate its performance and appropriate indicators. This has been added now, and they have redefined or added the term definition of the term indicator. They are very explicit here. They are saying quantitative, qualitative, or binary variable representing the status of an operations, management, condition, or impact. Now, whenever you are implementing, please understand that the criteria or the indicators, if you want to get more understanding, please go to the guidance here, and they're talking about your quantitative, qualitative, or binary variable. So maybe your KPIs now might need to be more elaborate, and more specific, and maybe more quantitative, basic. Yes. Now there is a slight, basically, there are two changes in the internal audit clause here. Now they have added the word objective, audit objective, which was not earlier there. So they are telling us to define the audit objectives very clearly, why the audit is performed, along with the criteria and scope. What this would do is, this will basically make you maybe revisit your SOP for, or your procedure for internal for conducting audits, wherein you have to define the objective of the audit. You may say that in your procedure itself there is a purpose or an objective. You can relook at that and then take a decision on this. But yes, they want us to have clear objectives, so of the audit. Basically, certain audits may not be just related to the requirement of the clauses, may also include other interested parties, so the objectives may change at that point of time. So here they are saying, please be specific on the objective. And then they have basically um, bifurcated the clause into three points, which is, they are talking about audit program, which has been expanded into three specific items: the audit program, the evidence of the implementation of the audit program, and then the evidence of the audit results. The rest of the points inside this remain the same, but then here they have uh, bifurcated and made things more clear. So you will have to demonstrate that there is an audit program properly. You will have to ensure that you give evidence, or that the audit is performed, and then the results and the corrective action, which was earlier also. In the ninth clause, which is the management review, basically earlier it was only one clause, 9.3, which is management review. It was a single clause. Now they have bifurcated these into three clauses: 9.3.1, 9.3.2, and 3. Which is now aligned with the Annex SL, or the on the large scale, I mean the high level structure of the standard. And they have added new guidance notes here. Management review does not have to cover every detailed piece of information, but provide a broad understanding to assess the EMS. This is in the guidance document. And the review must address situations where intended EMS outcomes have not been achieved. The review must address situations where intended EMS outcomes have not been achieved. If tomorrow the certain indicators are not meant, or certain objectives are not meant, so it is mandatory that you have to include them in the review, and provide evidence that they are key, what was discussed, and then what was the results of the discussion. So your output records of your management review need to be more specific, actually. The last clause, improvement here. So the summary of this, there were three clauses earlier. If we look at in the 2.15 standard, 10.1, 10.2, 10.3. Now what they have done is, they have just kept two of these clauses and they have made the continual improvement, which was the 10.3 clause, as a leading clause here. It's a lead clause. And then yes, it is right, because 10.2 non-conformity is a part of continual improvement. So they have addressed this conceptual gap which was earlier. They have removed 10.1 clause, basically. And apart from that, they have also added one point in the annexure of 10.1, which says that improvement can happen not just from the EMS process, but also from other other processes. Example, like there are certain companies who have implemented facility management. There are certain companies who have implemented water efficiency management. There are certain companies who are implementing energy management. So all these are all supporting management systems. So improvement definitely can come from these areas also. So they are not confined to their their thought process to only breakthrough change, etc. So they have also added this. So this is what this clause talks about. Again, preventive action has been addressed in the 4.1 context, and 6.1.4 is the risk and opportunity. Okay, so this was the 10th clause. Well, to summarize a summary of all these key changes, if we uh, consider terms and definitions, there's a modification slide, and then there is a new term that has been added. Okay, uh, context of they have strengthened it, and the impact is quite high. Context, so they have basically made things more clear in 4.1 when they have specifically said pollution, diversity, etc. need to be considered as a in the issue register when you identify issues. Interested parties, yes, actually they in fact, I would say there is equal emphasis on the interested party, because now various stakeholders requirements would be considered, which was not taken seriously earlier. Environmental aspect, yes, they have added a basically emergency situation. They have explicitly briefed us about what is life cycle perspective and made things more clear. There's a new requirement in 6 point and more clarification. Yes, it is impacting. Yes, risk and opportunity, it is a dedicated section, and yes, risk and opportunity register will be looked upon seriously henceforth by the auditors here, and it is a high impact. Planning for changes, of course, it's a new clause, and that is why and your MOC would have to change and be amended. Yes, and this will be audited, definitely audited, which was not audited earlier. Okay, resource is a there's a slight clarification. Documented information, there's the editorial and structural change. They have said available now rather than maintained. Okay, and externally provided processes in the 8.1, they have clearly expanded the terminology. In the ISO 45,000 clause, there was two separate clauses dedicated outsource and contracting. Now here they have combined it in this to externally provided, and they have also said given a set of controls that are to be implemented at the supplier level. Internal audit, yes, they have strengthened it. Basically, they have um, told us to add the objective of the audit, and then they have bifurcated in terms of audit program, etc. That three bifurcations they have done. And management review, they have given more clarification. They have bifurcated again the management review clause into three sub points, or three items. And then continual improvement, there is a new annexure, and then they have changed from three clause to two clause basically, and continual improvement is a dominant lead clause there, but the impact is basically low. Yes. So what needs to be done um, at the transition plan level? Okay. Now, largely, what you will be doing is you will be conducting a sort of a gap assessment for the new standard, for the new requirement. You will be basically understanding what needs to be done in terms of gap closure. Then you would be definitely trying to build capacity by creating more internal auditors, or you'll be appointing a third party internal audit firm for the first year or so, maybe to understand and have capacity building, and then you will be going in for the transition audit. Typically this will be the sort of action plan. So what we need to do at the gap assessment level is Let's go clause by clause. Clause number 3, maybe update your EMS documentation language. Well, you will have to look into the terms and conditions wherein you have used externally outsourced processes. You can replace it by the term externally provided processes, product and service. Wherever you have used the term in, maybe in your procedures, in your manual, in your wherever you have said fulfill compliance obligation, you will maybe change to meet compliance obligation. You will remove standalone risk reference and try to combine risk and opportunities wherever you use that word. Update documented information, you will be wherever you have used shall, maybe you will be using the term available, because the standard expects that. You will brief your internal auditors and document control team on terminology change to avoid non-conformities during transition audit. Clause number 4, yes, you will have to do a sort of activities, revise your context analysis. Maybe the way you do it is left to you. It can be Porter, it can be SWOT, it can be Pestle, or it can be any of your choice. But you have to explicitly include pollution levels, availability of natural resources, climate change, biodiversity, and ecosystem health mandatorily. Now, this is something that you have to work upon. Okay, and this would be a sort of a group exercise, not something done by the EHS function. And you will have to basically also include ecosystem health reference into your operations. Understand how your operations are impacting the ecosystem health. This will be spoken by the auditor. This language will be spoken by the auditor. Update your interested party register, basically related to biodiversity, GHG emissions, water consumption, etc. Whatever, yes, this is again going to be a thorough exercise. Please talk to your various stakeholders, internal stakeholders, and know basically what are the customers expecting, what are the authorities expecting, etc. And then try to update your interested party register. Ensure compliance, your compliance register captures whatever is legally applicable to the interested parties. Review scope statement so that significant environmental aspects are covered in that. You don't sort of not consider any operation in the scope. As far as sixth clause is concerned, you have to update your, yes, you have to update your environmental aspect impact procedure to basically formally include potential emergency situation as a category of conditions to consider. This is a mandatory requirement. Again, 6.1.2, if applicable, you have to also consider use of marine and coastal area impact if it is applicable to you. If you are if your business location or if a type of business demands that, okay, if you can consider, if you're a shipping company, if you're a company working in the coastal areas, etc., so you will have to consider that. Establish or update your risk and opportunity register with both beneficial and adverse examples. Establish, yes, management of change procedure, or amend your management of change procedure, covering new modified products, services, compliance change, etc. All these need to be considered for reason to implement management of change. Again, 6.3, amend your MOC procedure has to be linked with these clauses. Typically aspect impact, typically in communication, documentation, your criteria and control, and then your auditing and your continual improvement or your corrective action typically. And 6.2.1, confirm environmental objectives are available as documented information. Earlier in the standard, environmental objective was not a documented information. Now it is now they have taken care of that. Now it is to be a documented information. Clause number 7.8, we talk about a review and update of your resource inventory, basically to explicitly add document technology resources also, pollution control systems in case you have, etc. 7.5 is conduct a document control review and update all documented information reference to use available rather than maintain or retain. So these terms have been taken out and changed to available. So in your document control procedure or wherever you are, you can take a look at that. Update your Yes, this is very important and very critical. Update your contractor supplier management procedure, or your supply, or your procurement manual, or your procurement policy, or your entire procurement process, or your supply chain process has to be relooked basically. And it has to align with the requirement of the environment management system standard. And to use a new terminology, to explicitly include the five control mechanisms that are listed in. Please note this. Please note, you have to tell your purchase people that these are the controls that are going to be expected. You go to annexure 8.1, you will find them listed out there. Ensure, and if they ask what, then you have to then show why, then you have to show the standard requirement there. It will help you. And then your emergency preparedness procedure, they need to be reviewed basically, and it is expected to have a post emergency evaluation process there, periodic testing, and contact list for key personnel, aid agencies, and mutual assistant all this was primarily looked upon in the 45,000 standard, or the OHS standard. Now equally it is critical here. So this will be independently audited. Review and update all procurement contract documents, basically your purchase order, your terms, your agreements, etc., and your audit sheets, etc. Supplier audit sheets I'm talking about. Ninth cause, update your internal audit procedure. You have to ensure that three specific documented information items are retained: audit program, evidence of implementation of audit program, and evidence of audit results. So this has to be clearly now defined in your procedure. Review management, your agenda for management review needs to be reviewed and clearly confirm that risk and opportunity are included as a review item there, because it is added basically there, risk and opportunities. You can consider splitting management reviews into multiple sessions to align to the annexure 9.3, which says that you don't have to conduct everything at one point of time or one meeting. You can have a staggered approach also. So that's what the guidance document says. If any auditor says you have to do it once, you can show him the guidance note there. Update your continual improvement procedure to explicitly reference breakthrough change, innovation, and other, and improvement coming out of other systems also. Okay, and 10.2 is ensure your corrective action processes linked are linked to 4.1, the context, and the 6.1 is the risk and opportunity to capture the preventive action intent. So um, we exactly uh, come to the question answer session here. Before that, I will just like to again reiterate that this again is a evolution and not a revolution basically. So there is not a massive change in the standard that has taken place. The core structure is unchanged basically, but it has matured more. There were a lot of gaps which were still, I would, from my end, I would say that there had to be a sort of a another clause dedicated to consultation and consultation also, and participation, because similar to the safety management system, environment management system also needs a lot of participation and consultation from internally, so which we miss here. Well, the biggest change here is the MOC, the expanded risk and opportunity register, which is a dedicated clause 6.1.4, explicit reference of biodiversity, ecosystem health, etc. And emergency situation is now a mandatory requirement. Identification of emergency situation is a mandatory requirement. In emergency situation can be, a flooding of the ETP, okay, a sudden spillage of a tank, etc. So there can be several examples of that. Okay, um, uh, um, uh, 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 ETP pump basically, breaking down, etc. So a lot of places wherein emergency situations can be identified. It will be a group exercise which you have to show that, and then identify them, and then further identify the aspect. Okay, terminology updates, and then the transition deadline is up to April 29. And you can also confirm when your certification bodies are ready to go for a transition audit. It will depend upon each certification body. So we are open to taking questions. We have 10 minutes or so. Can we? Um, I'll open the chat box. Okay.
Participants can raise their hands for any queries.
Uh, Snell ma'am, can you read out the questions in the chat box? Yes. Dhananjay ji, yes, please. Please unmute and speak. Snell ma'am, can you just read?
Yes, yes. So people are asking whether they will get the PPT after training.
We will share the extract of this PPT completely without taking anything out. Okay. We will ensure that you are transferred everything what we have spoken about. Yes. Any
Yeah,
other
Mr.
There
question?
Dinesh
is
Salunke has Mr. Dinesh Salunke is have a query. He has put in the chat box.
Please tell.
Can you explain
Yeah.
new MOC clause 6.3 expanded R&O 6.1.4 explicit in details with example?
Yes, no problem. So first of all, this was a gray area in the previous standard. Eh, MOC um, is management of change. Okay, if we consider whether there is a change in terms of let us take an example here. There is a new machine that has been purchased. Let us consider a paint booth. Okay, if tomorrow there is a new paint booth that is going to be installed, okay, so what would happen in terms of an environmental uh, impact when we change the infrastructure here? So considering the paint booth has a new sort of either it has a water bed, or maybe it has a filter, paper filtration system. So what would change in that case? That change would bring a drastic change in the ETP requirements, in the waste management requirement. It will also have a drastic change in the compliance requirement, etc. You will have to declare it to the pollution control board, etc. So whenever there is a change in terms of infrastructure or maybe a process of any kind, there is definitely some other change that can impact the environment. So what is the requirement here is that uh, we need to address this change through a structured manner. So when you have a procedure for management of change, whenever there is a change that is initiated, it has to be raised. The request has to raise from maybe the user department, and then it has to undergo a scrutiny by all the functions, right? Uh, and then this process would identify all the environmental impacts in terms of compliance, in terms of infrastructure, etc. So that they can be further then taken care. Okay, so that's the concept of management of change here. So we are expected to have a procedure here. And if you consider risk and opportunity, well, risk and opportunity was earlier also there, but it was a part of 6.1. Okay, 6.1.1, which was combined with other things. Now they have taken it out, and they have sort of independently put it as a clause. See, we as implementers in hundreds of organizations, we have experienced that risk and opportunity was not explicitly basically looked upon, or or addressed. Now it will be independently audited by the organization. You will have to have a risk register in any form. It can be a software, it can be an Excel sheet, it can be whatever way you want, but risk. And then you also have to identify the opportunity in front of that. So that is basically a core requirement which would be audited. Okay, if you want more help on this, you can connect independently with me. I will solve all your doubts with examples also that time. And they are talking about explicit impact on the biodiversity and the ecosystem. So they are expecting us ki our organization while functioning, do we have any impact, or likewise, is there any impact on the organization, because of the ecosystem around. So the impact can be due to the organization, or on the organization. So we are expected to identify this also in this. That is what they are saying.
Yeah,
Any other?
Mr.
Yeah.
Mohammed, Mr. Mohammed Kashif has a query. Describe about major changes in 2026.
Major change, yes. If you want to have a two or three liner kind of a major change, yes, we can say, first of all, we can say that 6.3 as the clause was added, which was not earlier. It's a major change. Okay, we can say that risk and opportunity, this 6.1.4, again segregation is a major change. From the implementation angle, if we say, identifying potential emergency situation is now a mandatory exercise, that is again a sort of a added activity and a major change. Okay, fourth is, if you look at purchasing as a function which was not was escaping basically from the environment system, now has been explicitly addressed, and the five controls have been clearly defined basically. So this is again a major change, from the point of view, of the implementation here. Other than so these are the 4 5 sort of a predominant change that we are talking about here. Any other query?
Yeah, there is one more question from Mr. Sanjay. Our renewal is in April 27. Can we wait up to April 29?
I was expecting such a question actually. Your renewal is in April 27. See, now the point is, um, if you basically get yourself certified, let us now understand that after October 2027, um, certification bodies will not uh, issue the old certificate. After 18th October 2027, they will not issue the old version of the certificate. So if you are going to get renewed in April 27, so you should go in mandatory for the newer version only, because after that there will be no auditing. So have I answered your question? So you should directly go in for a transition that time.
Sir, there is one more question from Mr. Pandurang that does the revised standard require stronger consideration of pollution prevention and environmental restoration after an incident?
Uh, Yes, I mean, see, this was expected earlier also. It's not that the earlier standard had basically sort of not addressed this, but now they're saying post-emergency evaluation. If you look at that word, post-emergency evaluation, yes. So they have explicitly spoken about this. So this would definitely be audited by the auditor. Yes, what you have done. Yes.
One more question from Mr. Islam. I completed my lead auditor course from ASIB accredited certification body on 14,001 2015. How can I update this to 14,001 2026?
Yes, you will have to undergo a transition course from any certification body, I mean any agency who is providing these kind of programs. Okay, we do not conduct lead auditor. We are basically implementers, and we conduct internal auditing programs. What we do is we show the participants both side, as we have got years of experience in terms of implementation as well as auditing. So as far as your case is concerned, you should do a sort of a transition course. Maybe it's a 2 day or 3 day program, okay, for transition program, that can be done.
There is one more
Yeah,
question from Mr. Baban. Can you please explain the action on clause 5?
Clause 5. Clause 5, I'll tell you. As far as clause 5 is concerned, there is no structural change. Basically, there is not much of structural change. Okay, 5.2, as far as the policy is concerned, you just have to relook at the policy. Okay, you will have to relook at the policy, and you will have to include the commitments, basically other commitments, which include preservation of natural resources, sustainable resource use, climate change. So if you are not address this as a part of the commitment, you can revise your environment policy and add this. So this is the change. This is something that you need to do in the clause 5. Have I answered your question?
Sir, there is one more question from Dr. Venkatesh. Can we get the guidelines, please?
The guideline is a part of the document, is a part of the standard. After the requirements, after the clauses, the annexure basically include all the guidelines. Most of the time, people who read the standard do not go back and see the guidelines, which is basically a connected part of the document. Okay, so please look at that also, sirs. I mean, because they go hand in hand, actually. So if you look at the standard, if you buy the new standard, or if you have access to the new standard, the last part of the standard basically covers in fact, I will say it is covering literally how many pages, I'll say. I mean, from 18th page to basically 18 page to 235. 18 page to 35 are basically guidance only. So it is so explicit, actually. So half of the standard is the guidance. You can take a look at that. It is in the standard itself. Any other question?
Sir, yeah. One more question from Mr. Mohammad Kashif. Brief 8.1 clause that we have assessment of the supplier about the environment management system, or add social and quality.
I What is the question again? Can you read it again?
Brief 8.1 clause that we have assessment of the supplier about the environment
Ha, ha.
management system, or add social and quality.
Okay. Good point. Good point. So, good. What is happening is, in the ISO 9000 standard, 9001 standard, it is very explicit. Okay, that you have to, and also in the health and safety, it is clearly there. So now you will only have to update your current check sheet to include the environment requirement also. Now, since we are talking only about the environment management system, but if your organization is certified, has implemented quality, health and safety, environment uh, um, uh, together, so you can combine this together and then do a assessment of the supplier.
Sir, there is one more question from Mr. Dinesh Salunke. Is they have ISO 14001 policy as per new? Do they have to revise the ISO 14001 policy as per new standard?
Yes, you will. You please understand this. Okay, this. Let's go back to the fifth clause. See here, 5.2 basically you will have to review your policy. You will have to review your policy whether it is also including commitment for preservation of natural resources, sustainable resource use, climate change mitigation and adaptation, or protection of biodiversity and ecosystem. You should readily revise your policy to add this. If it is already there, you don't have to do it. So you just have to check whether all the commitments are addressed, from the standard. But this is what is basically been added new. So you have to check whether this is already available. If it is there, you don't have to change. If it is not there, please add this, because auditors will start asking this in the time to come.
There is one more question from Mr. Sanjay. He's asking whether the transition of ISO 9001 is also there.
The new standard is yet to be published. The new standard is yet to be published. It will be in the month of September. So we will be having a program like this, after that also. So it'll be yes, the new version of ISO 9001 2000 2026 is scheduled to be released in September 26 now. It has not yet released. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions, Snell madam?
Yeah, Mr. Dhananjay
Yeah.
Rao. Mr. Dhananjay Rao has a
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Dhananjay Rao is asking, I have doubt on how would integrated ISO 14001 and 45001 as IMS. Could you brief it?
Actually, now it is much simpler. It is much simpler. The whole, you see, now we are working with very large scale organizations. I'll tell you, this is my personal experience. We are working with companies with 30,000 employees, basically 13 sites, 12 sites. Okay. So, and these companies, they have ISO 9000, some have got IATF, some have got, all have got environment management system, 45,000, they have got ISMS, they have got water efficiency management, they have got energy management system. So now what has happened is this high level structure, okay, is getting merged, common for all the standards. Okay, so that is why the major change, like we are saying, that it is now in sync with the high level structure or the NXSL, which makes it basically possible to integrate everything. So how would you do it? Very simple here. You will have a common document control procedure, right? You will have you can have a common auditing process. You can combine your management review process. You can combine your corrective action process. You can combine your incident management process. You can combine your competence assessment, so etc. Wherever the common causes clauses are there, you can have a singular sort of a procedure. Your MOC can be combined. Your obviously MOC has to be combined, because you are going to understand the effect on quality, on safety, on and on environment at the same time. Okay, and also on the information security, etc. So you can combine these procedures. You can you can call me later. I will explain to you in brief, because this is what we are doing in large scale organizations, is harmonization of these systems, actually, which is a need of the hour. You cannot have multiple audits going on at the same time and different documentation. You can combine your MIS also, your KPIs also. Yeah. Any other question?
There is one more question from Mr. Dinesh Salunke.
Yeah.
from today's session, can we say that now 5001 and 14,001 2016 are now on same platform? So can we go for IMS?
Huh? Yes, I mean, yes, obviously you should go for a, if you have got multiple systems, you should integrate them actually. You should absolutely integrate. There is no point in having different procedures, having wasting time in, multiple audits, and you don't have to do much. See, integrated management system is for the auditors there so that they can, some combine some mandates. For you, it will be certain common procedures, but in a lot of times the philosophy in terms of implementation from an environment and from a safety may be different. Yes, there's a question here. GHGN, yeah, what was the question there? Yeah, you should go for an integrated management
ESG and
system.
ES.
Uh, Pardon?
Is DHG and ESD directly relevant to ISO 14001 2016?
Fantastic question. Fantastic question. Actually, you see in the 4.2 clause wherein you are identifying your interested parties or your stakeholders. Okay, there will be some subtle requirement from certain customers. Basically, that like I said, that you will have to calculate your GHG emission. Now, if you are registered in the Eco Audits portal, you are forced to do that. Okay, you are forced to do that. So yes, this may come as a requirement. This may come as a requirement. And your EMS is basically part of your larger ESG activity. It is helping your ESG in the E domain there. Okay, yes, they are all, so somewhere these sets all interconnect actually. Any other question? Any other question?
No, sir. I think we have completed all the questions.
Yeah, if you have any query, you can contact us independently. And if you want yeah, we will send you the sort of the handouts of this program definitely. And if you got any query, or if you need any kind of assistance, any kind of a hand holding in anything related to ESG, sustainability, environment, so definitely you can approach us. We have a independent vertical on risk, basically, which handle the entire health and safety domain independently. They have got deep expertise in that. And we have got another vertical for operational excellence, wherein we handle aerospace standards, management systems for automotive, etc. And we do a lot of business excellence activity there, implement Six Sigma, trace, etc. So we do there are various verticals which handle different subjects. You can connect to us for any kind of a guidance or any kind of a help. Snell ma'am, you can share the slide wherein um, we have the email IDs. Basically, we will share you our email IDs also, and our phone numbers also.
Yes.
You can connect to us definitely. Actually, it was a fantastic session. Thank you for all for joining together in this. And it was a pleasure to talk to you guys. Actually, Hmm? It was a pleasure all the time talking to you guys. Um, any other doubt? Any other? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, all of you. With this, Snell ma'am, do you have a last word? Vinayji, you have a last word to speak?
Yeah. So thank you for the participation. I think this environment has become a global agenda, and we have people from across the globe. And yeah, so we have been, like Mr. Manish said, we have been working since last 22 years. So if you have any kind of requirements, or any kind of support, if you need related to environment, like ESG, sustainability, so we are there to help. And you have our numbers, our contacts, our email IDs. You can definitely contact us through email or the mobile or the phone. So yeah, we will there to help you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. With that, we take note of yours. Thank you for being there. Thank you, sir. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.